A rancher saved an Apache woman from drowning, and nobody expected what happened that night. The evening had started like many others on the ranch, quiet, wide, and heavy, with the smell of dry earth. The rancher had finished his work for the day and was preparing to head back to the house when the sky began to change. At first, it was just a shift in the wind. Then the clouds gathered fast, dark and thick, rolling over the hills like a warning that had come too late. Storms were not unusual in this land, but something about this one felt different. He stood still for a moment, watching the horizon. Years of working the land had taught him to read the weather, and his instincts told him trouble was coming. The air felt heavy, almost pressing down on him. Thunder echoed far away, low and deep, like something waking up. He checked his watch and decided to inspect the fencing near the river before heading home. The river usually stayed calm, narrow, and shallow enough to cross in dry seasons, but storms upstream could turn it dangerous without warning. He grabbed his coat, climbed into his truck, and drove toward the lower pasture. By the time he arrived, the rain had started. At first it was light, then quickly turned sharp and cold. Drops hit the ground hard, raising the smell of wet soil. The wind picked up, shaking the trees and bending the grass flat. He stepped out of the truck and walked toward the fence line, boots sinking slightly into the softening earth. As he worked, the sound of the river grew louder. It no longer murmured, it rushed. Water levels were rising faster than he expected. He frowned and moved closer, peering through the rain. The river was already swollen, carrying branches, mud, and debris downstream. That was when he heard it. At first he thought it was the wind. The storm played tricks on the ears. But then the sound came again, faint, sharp, and unmistakable. A cry. He froze, heart beating hard. He turned his head, listening carefully. The sound came from downstream, near the bend where the river curved out of sight. Without thinking too long, he began running in that direction, rain soaking him through. As he reached the bend, his boots slipped on wet rocks. He grabbed onto a tree to steady himself and looked toward the water. His breath caught. A woman was in the river. She was fighting the current, her arms flailing as the water pulled her toward deeper ground. Debris spun around her, branches, broken wood, and clumps of grass. She was exhausted, barely keeping her head above water. The rancher didn't stop to think. He dropped his tools and ran along the bank, searching for a safe way down. The river was moving fast, faster than he had ever seen it. One wrong step could pull him in two. He shouted, hoping she could hear him over the storm, but the wind swallowed his voice. She turned her head slightly, eyes wide with fear, and for a moment he saw it clearly. She was running out of strength. He spotted a fallen tree leaning toward the water. Crawling carefully, he edged closer, stretching his body forward while gripping the trunk. The rain made everything slippery. His heart pounded so loudly he thought it might drown out the thunder. "Hold on," he shouted again, though he wasn't sure she could understand him. The woman was pulled closer by the current, spinning sideways. When she reached the edge near the tree, he lunged forward and grabbed her arm. The force of the water nearly tore them apart. Pain shot through his shoulder, but he refused to let go. Using every bit of strength he had, he pulled her toward him, inch by inch. Mud and water sprayed over them. His boots dug into the ground as he leaned back, muscles shaking. Finally, with one last effort, he dragged her out of the river and onto the muddy bank. They collapsed there together, gasping for air as rain poured down. The woman lay still, chest rising slowly, her body trembling from cold and shock. Her hair was soaked, stuck to her face. Her clothes were torn and heavy with water. The rancher rolled onto his knees and checked her breathing. It was shallow but steady. Relief washed over him, followed quickly by worry. She was unconscious and the storm was only getting worse. He looked around, trying to think clearly. There was no way she could stay there. The river could rise even more and the cold would be dangerous. Carefully, he lifted her into his arms. She was lighter than he expected, but carrying her through the mud was difficult. Step by step, He made his way back to the truck. Rain stung his eyes and his arms burned, but he didn't stop. Once he reached the vehicle, he opened the door and gently laid her across the seat. He took off his coat and covered her as best he could. As he climbed into the driver's seat, he took a deep breath, trying to steady his shaking hands. He glanced at her again. Her face was calm now, but marked by exhaustion. There was something strong about her expression, even in sleep. He started the engine and drove back toward the ranch house, tires sliding slightly on the wet ground. The road felt longer than usual, the storm louder, the night heavier. When they arrived, he parked close to the house and carried her inside. The warmth hit them both immediately. He laid her near the fireplace, stoked the fire higher and wrapped her in dry blankets. He worked quietly, respectfully, keeping his movements careful and controlled. As he removed debris from her hair and checked her hands for injury, he noticed details he hadn't before: the beadwork bracelet on her wrist, worn smooth with time, and the small symbol stitched into the edge of her clothing. He recognized it. She was Apache. The realization brought a pause. This land held history, some painful, some unresolved. He knew enough to understand that trust did not come easily, especially between strangers. Still, none of that mattered right now. What mattered was that she was alive. The storm raged outside, rain hammering the roof, wind howling through the trees. Inside the ranch house, time seemed to slow. He sat nearby, keeping watch, listening to her breathing, wondering who she was and how she had ended up in the river on a night like this. He had no idea yet that this rescue would become more than a moment of survival. He didn't know that the choices he made this night would follow him long after the storm passed. For now, all he knew was that the river had nearly taken her, and fate had placed him there just in time. The woman did not wake up right away. The rancher stayed close, sitting in an old wooden chair near the fireplace. The fire cracked softly, sending warm light across the room. Outside, the storm still raged, rain striking the windows and wind pushing against the walls. But inside the house there was a calm he had not felt in a long time. He watched her chest rise and fall. Each breath felt like a small victory. He had seen danger before, animals injured, men hurt on the land, but this felt different. This was not about work or duty. This was about a life pulled back from the edge. After some time, her fingers moved slightly. He noticed at once and leaned forward. Her eyelids fluttered, then opened halfway. Her eyes were dark and alert, even through confusion. She tried to sit up, but her body was weak. "Easy," he said softly, raising his hand so she wouldn't panic. "You're safe." She froze, eyes scanning the room, the fire, the unfamiliar walls. Her breathing quickened. She tried again to move, pain showing on her face. "Don't rush," he said. "You were in the river. The water was strong." She swallowed hard, her voice barely a whisper when she spoke. "The river? Yes," he replied. "The storm came fast. You were almost swept away." She closed her eyes for a moment as if the memory was too heavy. When she opened them again, she looked straight at him. There was fear there, but also something else: alertness, caution, strength. "Who are you?" she asked. "My name is Daniel," he answered. "I own this ranch." She nodded slowly, pulling the blanket closer around her shoulders. "I am Naya," she said after a pause. "I am Apache." "I figured," he said gently. "You don't need to worry. You can rest here until the storm passes." She studied his face as if weighing his words. Trust did not come easy. He could see it in her eyes. She did not thank him yet. She did not relax. She simply nodded again. Silence filled the room, broken only by the fire and the rain outside. Daniel stood and poured a glass of water, bringing it to her carefully. "Drink," he said, slowly. She took it with trembling hands and sipped. The warmth seemed to help. Some color returned to her face. After a while she spoke again. "I tried to cross before dark," she said. "I thought the river would stay calm." "It tricks people," Daniel replied, "especially when storms hit upstream." She nodded, her gaze drifting to the window. "I needed to get home." Daniel didn't push her with questions. He had learned long ago that silence could be kinder than words. Instead, he checked the fire, added another log, and made sure the blankets were dry and thick. As minutes passed, her breathing steadied. She shifted slightly, wincing as she moved her leg. Daniel noticed at once. "You're hurt," he said. "Just sore," she replied. "The water pulled me hard." "I'll take a look if you want," he said, "only to make sure nothing's broken." She hesitated, then nodded. He stayed respectful, checking carefully. There were bruises, scrapes, and signs of strain, but nothing severe. Still, exhaustion weighed heavily on her. "You should rest," he said. "It's been a long night." She lay back, eyes open, watching the ceiling. "Why did you help me?" she asked quietly. Daniel paused. No one had asked him that in years. "Because you needed help," he said simply. She considered his answer, then turned her face toward the fire. For the first time, some of the tension left her shoulders. Hours passed slowly. The storm weakened, though rain still fell. Daniel stayed awake, sitting nearby. He brewed simple tea and left it within her reach. Sometimes she slept. Sometimes she woke and stared into the flames. In one of those quiet moments, she spoke again. "I lost my way," she said. "The trail was gone. The river rose too fast." Daniel nodded. "Nature doesn't wait for anyone." She smiled faintly at that, then grew serious. "Many would not have stopped. Many would have looked away." "I don't look away," he said. She turned to him then, truly looking at him for the first time. His face showed lines of hard work, of sun and years spent outdoors. His eyes were tired but honest. "Thank you," she said at last. The words were soft, but they carried weight. As the night deepened, headlights appeared briefly outside. A neighbor had driven past, slowing near the house. Daniel stepped outside to speak with him. The man glanced toward the window, clearly curious. "Everything okay?" the neighbor asked. "Fine," Daniel replied. "Just helping someone caught in the storm." The neighbor nodded but didn't look convinced. In small places, news traveled fast. Daniel knew questions would come. When he returned inside, Naya was awake again. She had heard the engine. "People will talk," she said calmly. "They always do," Daniel answered. "Doesn't change what's right." She studied him once more, then closed her eyes. "I will leave in the morning," she said. "I don't want trouble for you." "You're not trouble," he said firmly. "And the roads won't be safe until daylight anyway." She didn't argue. The fire burned low as the night slowly gave way to early morning hours. The storm finally broke, leaving the world quiet and heavy with wet earth. Daniel leaned back in his chair, exhaustion settling into his bones. Still, he stayed awake, listening, watching, protecting a stranger who was no longer entirely a stranger. Outside, the river continued to rush, carrying away what it could. Inside, something had shifted quietly, without announcement. Neither of them knew yet that this night would be remembered not for the storm, but for the choice to act, to trust, and to stand firm when it mattered most. Morning light entered the ranch house slowly, slipping through the curtains in pale lines. The storm had passed during the night, leaving behind a deep quiet that felt almost unreal. The air smelled fresh, clean, and heavy with wet soil. Birds had begun to sing again, their calls soft and careful, as if the land itself was waking up after a long struggle. Daniel stood at the kitchen counter, pouring coffee into 2 cups. He hadn't slept much. His body was tired, but his mind was alert. He kept listening for movement from the other room. When he finally heard a faint step, he turned. Naya stood near the doorway, wrapped in one of his extra coats. It hung loose on her, but she held herself straight. Her face looked better now, still pale but steady. She met his eyes without fear. "Good morning," he said. "Good morning," she replied. She moved slowly, testing her strength. Daniel placed 1 cup on the table and motioned for her to sit. She hesitated for a moment, then did. He noticed how carefully she moved, respecting her body's limits. They drank in silence for a while. The quiet didn't feel uncomfortable. It felt honest. "The river went down," Daniel said finally. "Still strong, but safer now," she nodded. "I will go back today. "You don't have to rush," he said. "You're still healing." "I don't like staying where I don't belong," she replied gently. Daniel considered that. "You belong wherever you're treated with respect." She gave a small smile at that, then looked down at her cup. After a moment she spoke. "My family lives beyond the hills," she said. "I had gone to help my aunt. I thought I could return before the rain." Daniel listened closely. He didn't interrupt. He had learned that stories offered freely were gifts, not demands. "The land teaches us," she continued, "but it also tests us." "That's true," Daniel said. "This land tests everyone." She looked around the room, taking in the simple furniture, the worn floors, the tools resting near the door. "You live alone," she said. "Yes." "Why?" The question was direct but not rude. Daniel took a slow breath. "Life didn't turn out the way I planned," he said. "Some losses make people pull away." She nodded, understanding without needing details. "We all carry things," she said. Later, Daniel offered to drive her closer to her route. She agreed. Outside, the world looked changed. Puddles reflected the sky. The grass bent low, still wet. The river roared but no longer threatened to break its banks. As they drove, the landscape passed quietly. Neither spoke much. The silence felt thoughtful, not empty. When they reached the edge of the road near the trail she had taken, Daniel stopped the truck. "This is as far as I can go," he said. She stepped out carefully, then turned back to him. "You saved my life," she said. "That is not a small thing." "I did what anyone should," he replied. She shook her head. "Not everyone does." She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small woven band, worn but clean. She placed it in his hand. "For remembrance," she said, "so you don't forget this night." He accepted it with respect. "I won't." Before leaving, she looked back once more. "The land remembers," she said, "so do people." Then she turned and walked away, steady and strong. Daniel watched until she disappeared into the hills. The drive back to the ranch felt longer than usual. The house felt quieter, too quiet. Days passed. Life returned to routine, feeding animals, repairing fences, checking the land. But something was different. Daniel found himself thinking about the night, about the fire, about the way Naya had spoken of the land as if it were alive. One afternoon, a neighbor stopped by. "Heard you pulled someone out of the river," the man said. Daniel nodded. "She needed help." The neighbor frowned. "People are talking." "Let them," Daniel said. The neighbor left, shaking his head. Daniel returned to his work, but the words lingered. He knew how things went in small places. Stories grew fast, often twisted by fear or misunderstanding. That evening, as the sun set, Daniel sat on his porch, the woven band wrapped loosely around his wrist. He looked toward the hills, wondering if Naya had made it home safely. He didn't know that this story was far from over. The night had done more than bring two strangers together. It had opened a door, one neither of them had planned to walk through, but one that would not stay closed for long. The days after the storm passed slowly, but the quiet felt heavier than before. Daniel returned to his routines, yet nothing felt the same. Every morning when he stepped outside, he found himself looking toward the hills without realizing it. The land was still the same, but something inside him had shifted. A week later, a truck pulled into the ranch yard just as the sun climbed high. Two men stepped out. They were not strangers. Daniel recognized them at once, local officers who handled matters in the area. Their faces were serious, their movements careful. "We need to ask you a few questions," one of them said. Daniel nodded and wiped his hands on his jeans. "Go ahead." They spoke about the storm, the river, and the woman. Someone had reported seeing a stranger at his house that night. Questions followed: where she came from, why she was there, whether she had permission to be on the land. Daniel answered calmly. "She was pulled from the river," he said. "She would not have survived otherwise." One officer exchanged a look with the other. "Some people are concerned," he said. "They think trouble could come from this." Daniel stood firm. "Helping someone in danger is not trouble." The officers wrote notes but said little more. When they left, the ranch felt quieter than ever. Later that same day, Daniel drove into town for supplies. He could feel eyes on him as he walked through the store. Conversations stopped when he passed. Whispers followed him between the aisles. An older man approached him near the counter. "You should be careful," he said. "People don't like what they don't understand." Daniel met his gaze. Then maybe they should learn. That night, Daniel sat by the fire again, staring into the flames. The woven band rested in his palm. He thought about the fear in Naya's eyes when she first woke up and how it had slowly softened. He wondered if she sensed what was coming. 2 days later, a car approached the ranch slowly. Daniel stepped outside, cautious. When the door opened, his breath caught. Naya stepped out. She looked stronger now, her posture steady, her eyes clear. She wasn't alone. 2 elders stood with her, calm and watchful. "We came to speak with you," one elder said. Daniel nodded and invited them inside. The air was tense but respectful. They spoke quietly about the river, about the rescue, and about the rumors spreading in town. "Some believe wrong stories," the elder said. "We came to hear the truth from you." Daniel told them everything. He did not change a single detail. He spoke simply, honestly. When he finished, the elder nodded. "You did right." Naya looked at Daniel. "People are saying things," she said. "I did not want silence to turn into lies." Daniel felt a weight lift from his chest. "Thank you for coming." That evening, neighbors gathered near the ranch, drawn by curiosity and fear. Voices rose, questions were asked, accusations followed. Before Daniel could respond, Naya stepped forward. "I am alive because of him," she said clearly. "The river would have taken me." Her voice did not shake. The crowd grew quiet. "This land belongs to all who respect it," she continued. "Saving a life needs no permission." Some turned away, ashamed. Others remained silent, thinking. The elders spoke next, reminding everyone of shared history, of kindness shown and kindness owed. The crowd slowly dispersed. That night Daniel stood on his porch, the stars bright above him. Naya stood beside him. "You stood your ground," she said. "So did you," he replied. She smiled faintly. This night changed more than one life. Daniel knew she was right. The storm had passed long ago, but its true impact was only now being felt. The morning after the gathering felt different. The air was calm, clear, and bright. Sunlight stretched across the ranch yard, touching the wet grass left behind by the storm days ago. Daniel stood outside for a long time, breathing slowly, listening to the quiet. For the first time since the river night, the silence felt peaceful instead of heavy. Naya and the elders stayed only a short while longer. There were no speeches, no long goodbyes. Everything that needed to be said had already been spoken. Before leaving, one of the elders placed a hand on Daniel's shoulder. "You acted with courage," the elder said. "That matters more than opinions." Daniel nodded, deeply moved. When Naya turned to leave, she paused. "Paths cross for a reason," she said. "Sometimes only once, sometimes again." "I hope again," Daniel replied honestly. She smiled, then walked toward the waiting car. Daniel watched until the dust settled and the road was empty once more. Life did not change overnight, but it began to shift in small ways. In town, people no longer whispered as loudly when Daniel passed. Some nodded. A few even spoke to him, awkward at first, then more open. The story of the rescue spread, not as rumor now, but as truth. The river, the storm, the choice to act. Facts replaced fear. One afternoon, a woman from town stopped by the ranch with a basket of food. "For what you did," she said simply. Daniel accepted it quietly. He didn't feel like a hero. He had only done what felt right. Weeks passed. The land healed. The river returned to its calm flow. Fence lines were repaired. Cattle moved peacefully through the fields. Yet Daniel noticed changes within himself. He was less distant, less guarded. The loneliness that once felt permanent had loosened its grip. Sometimes, in the evenings, he sat on the porch and thought of Naya. He thought of her strength, her calm voice, the way she spoke of the land as if it listened. He wore the woven band every day now. It reminded him that one moment could shape a lifetime. One late afternoon, a familiar car appeared again on the road. Daniel stood slowly, heart beating faster. Naya stepped out alone this time. She looked confident, sure of her place. "I was nearby," she said. "I wanted to see how things settled." "They did," Daniel replied. "Because you spoke." She shook her head. "Because you stood." They walked the land together, speaking of simple things, whether work, family, no pressure, no expectations, just understanding. As the sun lowered, Naya stopped near the riverbank. The water moved gently now, reflecting the sky. "This river took nothing," she said softly. "It gave something instead." Daniel looked at her, realizing the truth of her words. That night when the stars filled the sky, Daniel understood something clearly. Saving a life had not just changed one night. It had changed the direction of his own. Some storms destroy, others reveal who we are, and some bring people together not by force, but by choice.